What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Garath Davies. Garath reacts to the Usyk Fury collapse, and this is what he had to say. He said, quote, "We know who pulled the plug." Journalist Gareth A has reacted to the collapse in talks for an undisputed heavyweight world title fight between Tyson and Usyk. And speaking to IFL TV, Garath explained that despite public opinion appearing to be against Fury, it was actually Usyk who withdrew from the talks. And this is what he said, quote, he said, "We know who pulled the plug. It's public record." Igis Klimas said early in the morning that Usyk was pulling out. Alex Krasuk said as much in the afternoon after he and Frank Warren had been live on Talk Sports. The rematch clause was a sticking point. Usyk wanted a rematch clause, and he had accepted 70-30. In the end, you need both sides to agree, and Usyk wasn't happy with the deal being offered to him. We are where we are. It's very disappointing, but they'll all move on now. However, he had also been linked to a blockbuster bout with former world champion Deontay Wilder, with representatives in the Middle East reportedly interested in staging the contest, although it would be a much more lucrative fight than one of his mandatory defenses. But Usyk may have to relinquish at least one of the cherished world titles if he decided to fight Usyk next. And those are the only words of Garath A. And let me counterpunch. Now, we all know Garath A is a Tyson Fury fan, okay? Not supporter, but fan. We know this. And the point he's trying to make is, well, who ultimately pulled the plug? And that's Alexander Usyk. So for that reason, they blame Team Usyk for pulling the plug. And let me counterpunch. That's just like saying, hey, you couldn't get the money that you wanted because they wouldn't give it to you because they didn't want to hire you. Therefore, you pulled out of negotiations for employment and you went on about your business. But then the first thing someone could say is, oh, well, you didn't want to work there after all. No, you shouldn't want to work there after all. Okay? For that example given, you should want to be respected as the way you are, as the person that they want to hire, as the person that they want to do business with. Okay? Because it's like, for what they're saying is, hey, did you pull the plug? Yes, they pulled the plug because they have something called dignity. Okay? And they know when they're getting fucked with. And that's exactly what was happening. What Garath refuses to mention about pulling the plug is they had did their homework before they pulled the plug. See, Igis Klimas and Alexander Krasuk, they already knew what was going on with Javen Sugar Hill. They knew he wasn't even there to train Tyson, and they knew Tyson wasn't training. And see, if you're smart, you would discern this. Well, if Tyson isn't training, why are we going through this, that, and the other when if we do get this over the line, and they do, and we do possibly agree, Tyson Fury's lying. And if you're lying about what you're doing, then how can you be trusted? How can you be trusted to know that you are actually training? And when we find out you're not training and then the real gets real, then you want to ask for more time. Well, if you ask for more time, you're screwing up the date that you already promised us. Just like you're screwing with the rematch that you've already promised, or we promised you guys, because we accepted your offer. Now, all of a sudden, that is not good enough. That rematch clause stipulation with the 50-50 was good enough at one point, but it wasn't good enough after Alexander Usyk agreed to the 30-70. And I wonder why. Okay, so hearing that, if you were team Usyk, you wouldn't want to do business with people, for one, that lie. For two, that bullshit you. For three, that's really not fair to yourself. That's unprofessional. Because Tyson Fury really didn't have anything else to do but to sign the dotted line, sign the contract, stop all the bluffing, because the bluff game was over. And they knew it was a bluff game because Tyson Fury, yeah, he might have joked about it, but he really didn't mean it, because deep down inside, he was like, well, what the fuck am I going to do? I haven't called Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill will be here. That'll get me off the hook for a little while. But then, at some point, I have to do something about not fighting this guy, because I'm not ready to fight this guy yet, or I don't want to fight him at all. So it's either he didn't want to fight him or he was afraid to. But, only God knows it himself. But for them to say, hey, they pulled out, no, that's exactly what Tyson Fury wanted them to do. He was happy for that to happen. He was happy for Alexander Usyk to pull out, because he knew there was nowhere for him to go. Now, like I've already mentioned, I would have never pulled out. I wouldn't have pulled out for shit. I would have sat there and watched Tyson Fury lie to me and lie to me and lie to me and slowly dig his grave. So the more he lies, the more dirt we can dig. So the deeper we can bury him. That's what I would have done. I would have made him a joke because I knew he was I know he was lying. And if you know someone's lying, the first thing you do is don't let them think that you know that they're full of shit. No, you go with it until they have nowhere else to go. But the rematch clause that they pulled out of nowhere was a slick one, because they've already covered that in the points. That was a resurrected point issue, the rematch clause. So how in Hades, why would you pull out a a point that's already been solved, unless you didn't want to fight, unless you wanted to have something that Alexander Usyk would have something to stick on, because you don't want it to go smooth. See, I'm very, 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 very disappointed in Tyson Fury. But because I knew and I know what's going on with Tyson. Tyson is not what we thought he was. Tyson is a guy that has tricked everyone to believe that he was one of the best fighters in the world, which now I don't believe any of it. I think he ducked Joe Joyce last year also. He ducked Joe Joyce last year. He ducked Alexander Usyk early last year. He ducked Alexander Usyk the middle part of this year, or the first part of this year. He ducked Anthony Joshua because he felt, well, let's make that fight happen, until I guess he found out that, it wasn't moving fast enough or whatever. So he made a deadline. So he created all these barricades and all these sticking points that wouldn't help a fight be made. And I'm convinced now that Tyson Fury is on his last leg, and he should just retire, because he's not what you thought he was. He just didn't have to go in the ring and get his ass whooped for us to know it. But anyway, that's my counterpunch. You guys tell me what you think about Garath, a fan of Tyson Fury. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.